These are the two saws that I used to make my cutting station. The first one is a DeWalt a cold cut saw, and the other one was a rigid compound miter saw. Here I cut the attachment of the compound miter saw, and here I took the base of the DeWalt cutting saw that I wanted to use and just laid out a template for me to understand how to attach the base of the DeWalt to the base of that rigid, and to see kind of like how far I would be able to swivel the cutting unit. And I came to realize that I can only cut a full 45-degree angle on one side just because of the way the cutting aggregate, the saw, is offset of the base on the DeWalt. But this little paper template helped me kind of like to develop this mounting plate that I cut out of 1/4-inch steel with all the mounting holes into the base of the rigid and also into the DeWalt. Here you can see kind of like that angle piece that mounts and holds that mounting plate securely to the rigid base. I had to grind out this little area to be able to swivel it to a full 45, and here is basically the first time I've had my saw mounted to the rigid base and testing kind of like the full reach in both areas. After I had done that, I started to build the cart to mount that whole cutting setup. This is all 2x2 square tubing, 1/8-inch wall, and so I just built this cart, which I planned to have located on 3 wheels. 2 are solid, straight, and the other one is a swivel caster in the back, just to make sure this saw is not rocking depending on the floor, that it'll always stand solid. And so I added these 2 tubes underneath to have some supports, material supports, that I also wanted to, if I can collapse it, rest on the back side of this cart to minimize its footprint in my shop. At that point, I shared that space with others, and I wasn't quite sure kind of like how long I could have the saw set up in one place, so I wanted to have it mobile. And here you can see one of the material support rails on the back of the cart and also inserted into one of those 2 tubes. They were just secured kind of like with a clevis pin and held in place. I had somebody cut the base plates and inserts for my cutting fence that I made, because I wanted to replace the one that was on the rigid saw because it wasn't heavy duty enough to withstand the forces of cutting metal. And here you can see I'm working on my material supports. Here's a roller at the end, and these are just regular supports that act as material supports and stops at the same time. This is an image of the support that I mounted to my cart next to the saw on both sides to hold the base for my cutting fence, so I can move that fence back and forth and reference it to make sure that my saw will cut square. I took a 3x3 angle and cut it down and basically mounted it in 2 sections on top of that 1/2-inch base plate that I had water jetted. And here you can see kind of like how this alignment works on the saw. And so here's just a picture of what I can cut on each side. And so I have full 45 on the one side and some limitations on the other. Here you can see those stops that are that I use as material supports and also as stops, and I can rotate them kind of like 90 degrees, and they're just located and locked in place with these adjustable handle screws. And this whole setup has worked really well. Here you can see the material supports and the stops kind of like located on the back side of the cart in case I would have to collapse the whole setup. And so the saw basically when not in use, was just using a very, very limited space. It was very compact, and I didn't have to do it for a long time because the two guys that were with me in that space kind of like moved on to greater and better things, and so I had the space to myself, and that allowed me kind of like to have that saw set up permanently. Here's just a picture of the chip collection box that I fabricated on the backside of the cut line, and that chip box works really well. It kind of like captures most of the chips that are generated by cutting the material, and I can easily clean it out with this removable piece that I have on the back. Here you can see just the stops and the material support on one side, and it's just a lot of interest that has been with that saw. Here are some two stronghold clamps that I added to my fence to hold material securely while cutting, and those clamps have worked phenomenally well on my saw. So at the end, after I had it all done, I looked to create some storage space for my saw blades and just additional tools that I wanted to add to the saw, and love this setup. And thanks for watching, and if you like it, please subscribe to my channel. There will be more. Thanks.